seems as though, at least in my opinion, as we stand today, Emily Rand, the Florida Mutineers are no longer the team that we're watching as possible contenders. They, in my humble opinion, have done enough to prove themselves as the team to beat, and also my favorites going into champs. They are my number one team in Call of Duty League. Yes, we will weight the last two tournaments heavier than the rest of the season. However, they've done enough. No longer are they the team where we have question marks around them. The last two events, they beat Atlanta in 2 consecutive finals for a combined 6-1 score. 3-1 last event, 3-0 the most recent event. They beat Chicago the last event. They beat Dallas. They improved in beating Dallas in back-to-back events. 3-2 2 events ago and 3-1 this event. So I don't need any more evidence that the Florida Mutineers are the number one team in Call of Duty League today, right now, at this moment.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, actually. I think the big thing, so I wanted to look ahead because if I was like, I think Group B in the New York home series is actually really stacked. And I'm looking at right now, it's London, Chicago, New York, Minnesota. So that's going to be really difficult. I know, but I think the Florida Mutineers are definitely the best team in Call of Duty League right now. I actually don't think there's a argument against it. I think what you can say, if you're looking at the year as a whole, because this has been a really weird year, what you can say still, and I think a lot of people are still trying to find a way to wrap their heads around how good are Florida and what is my idea of being good in Call of Duty LAN versus online. And I wrote about this when I was talking about Florida. We were doing our who won the weekend column together. But I think the big thing is that the first time Florida won, because that event was such a mess. We still have a lot of issues.
This is the Dallas home series you're talking about.
Yeah, we still have a lot of we still have a lot of issues. Don't get me wrong but this was by far the worst, right? This was people are rubber banding everywhere. It was really, really bad. I think you could look at that event and be like, okay, Florida won, but the competitive integrity at that event wasn't the best. It was our first online event. We had a lot of issues. Now you cannot say that. You can say, I wonder how Florida would do if all of this was on LAN, because I think that will unfortunately kind of overshadow this, always. But I don't think you can take away from Florida's wins, especially their past two, and the teams they had to go through to get there. And the fact that we were talking about, okay, what makes Florida a top team? What would push them to be a top team in our eyes? And the response to that was consistency, because after they did win their first event, they then didn't qualify for bracket stage at their next event. Since Pharaoh has joined the team, and then later since Awakening has joined the team, this team looks really well coordinated. If you listen to their comms, they're some of the more chill comms in the Call of Duty League, which I find really interesting. I always find it super interesting to listen to team comms, because sometimes it's just everyone yelling at really high speeds on top of each other. And Florida's comms are surprisingly relaxed by comparison to a lot of other teams I've listened to. So they really seem to be in tune with each other. Obviously, people are going to bring up Awakening. Awakening has been an absolute beast since he started for Florida. But I think Pharaoh's contribution can't be underrated either, because they work a lot better with the slightly slower pace that Pharaoh has, as opposed to Pristini kind of going out immediately, right? We think of Pristini, he's immediately busting through. You see it from him since he's been on the Huntsman too. They seem to work a lot better with the slightly slower style that Pharaoh plays. And this team, I think the most impressive thing I saw from them this past weekend is that they were able to adjust mid-series. And that's just super important. If something's not working for you, especially in a few of their S&D rounds. They were able to adjust fairly quickly, which I think is something that not every team can do. So that's the thing that has impressed me the most about Florida. Obviously, everyone's going to bring up Awakening. Everyone's going to bring up Skies, who has been like consistently great. And at this point, kind of overshadowed by his own teammates, right? Given that, like, you know, Pharaoh came on the team, he was working out really well, and Awakening came on the team, and he was working out really well, and Skies has just always been there, and he's been performing amazingly well. So, I mean, I really love watching this team. I love watching teams grow and progress as the season goes on, and Florida has been kind of the best example of that. Like, you can draw a line from like point A to point B as to where they were and where they are now, and they're obviously a very improved team since then.
The Real PD Gaming in chat says online probably, but on LAN I don't think they would be. But we're not on LAN right now.
Yeah,
And the Mutineers,
that's the issue.
yeah, but the Mutineers also use this to their advantage, rightfully so. Use everything that is available to you. So the Mutineers were struggling on LAN, even though they did make a final. They weren't getting the success they wanted. They had the opportunity to bring in players that would perform well online for them, and that's exactly what they did. And so for that reason, that was just a very smart 200 IQ play by the Mutineers. So we don't need to worry about LAN right now because, to be honest, all signs are pointing to champs happening online. I really don't see, my personal opinion, I don't think we're going to see an announcement coming where champs are going to happen on LAN. I really don't. So if that's the case, and I'm operating under my hypotheses here under that assumption, the Mutineers are far and away, in my opinion, as we stand today, the favorites for that reason, because they have proven to me more than enough. The only, ironically, Emily, the only home series that they were involved with online that they didn't win was their own home series. Every other one they've won. Like, so that's enough for me. That is enough proof that they are the team to beat and they are the number one team in the power rankings for me, even though they're not number one in the standings. Atlanta still hold that position. And Atlanta might be the best team if you're looking at the LAN era and the online era and the season as a whole, but you just can't do that this season, right? You can't do that. You have to look at online as its own almost separate season, a part two, in a way.
I mean, you can. I think you can look at both. Like, I don't think it takes away from Florida's accomplishments to say that combined LAN and online Atlanta has been the most consistent and the best team. Like, I actually, and I mean, you could kind of make a similar argument for Dallas, given that they won the Los Angeles home series, but that's a little bit more debatable, unfortunately, because they had a really, really rough first week in league play that I think overshadows a lot of that in a lot of people's opinion. I don't think it should personally, but the way people talk about them, I think it does sometimes. I don't think it takes away from Florida's accomplishments to say that things might be different if it was on LAN, because we don't know how this team would look on LAN. And I mean, if champs isn't on LAN, I'll be super sad, but I also would agree that given the current state of the pandemic in the US, that's going to be incredibly difficult to make happen. As far as I know, they would have to find a location, all go there, depending on what state it would be. They'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks before they would be able to actually all come together and play. So that would be a big ask. I mean, I think if you asked players to do that, they would, because they overwhelmingly want to play on LAN. But the logistics and expense behind that might just not be feasible. Even if you're doing, like, presumably without an audience, right? Because wherever you're doing it, there's no way you can have a gathering of more than a certain amount of people. But no, I mean, I think it's still completely fair to bring that up. What I don't like is when people use it to take away from Florida's legitimate accomplishments. Like, you still need to give Florida credit for the performances that they have put up online. That, like I said, the only one I think that's like specious is that first Dallas home series was pretty atrocious in terms of competitive integrity, in my opinion. But the past two, I do think you need to give Florida credit. Like, I think it can be both. Like, I think you can say, in an ideal world, how would this team perform on land? Would they be able to keep up with a team like Atlanta on land? Would they be able to go up against a Dallas on land? But
it's crazy to think that, like, even if we were having that argument, there would be a large portion of people out there that would still not rate Florida #1 with LAN in mind. Do you know what I mean? Like, in the hypothetical argument of if this season were all on LAN and we didn't have the online component and Florida still made the changes, there would still be a portion of the audience that would say, no, I'm still hitching my wagon on Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas. Florida still haven't done enough for me. Like that, I truly believe that argument would be there.
I think so too, actually. And I think it's just because Florida have a lot of new players that people don't, I think trust is probably the wrong word, but like they don't have as high of an affinity for, or they haven't seen perform as consistently over the years as players on other teams. So, but I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of sad at how much people take away from Florida, to be honest.
Yes.
Because like I said, the first, like after the first one, yeah, that's fine. That event was pretty scuffed, but these past two have been a lot better. And I think like very obvious hiccups aside that were not in Florida's matches, I think that there's a compelling argument that they're the best team in Call of Duty League right now.
So Emily writes a column every event. I actually posted the link in the chat. Basically, it's every map in one sentence. Let me read you the final sentence for Hackney Yard domination, Florida versus Atlanta.
That was rough. Like this is a 3-0, right? And you look at that, you look at a 3-0 and you're like, oh, they got like whopped, right? The first two were close. The Dom was not close.
So this is what you wrote about that map. This was the tournament clinching effort by the Mutineers. Quote, Florida get an early triple cap and never look back as they take a record-breaking 235-70 domination win.
It's nuts. Yeah.
That's, I mean, what more? For everyone that is doubting Florida still, stop it. Just stop it. You're looking foolish right now. Florida, today, there is no more that they need to prove to anybody that they are the best team in CDL right now online. There's no, in the circumstances that we're in, the Florida Mutineers are the favorites to win the World Championship right now, today. It will take a catastrophic collapse in the next two events. They're playing in two of the next three events, as are the Atlanta FaZe. It would take a monumental collapse for me personally to change my opinion on this.